Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange, and the host who might be on his 5th or 6th life, depending on who you ask. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the strange and unusual literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to focus on a book that I read, one that is about reincarnation, resource cartels, the ancient past, and death. I am talking about Reincarnation Blues by Michael Poore. A pretty wonderful book. I really like the cover art, and some of it on the back. What I didn't realize until I nearly finished the book is that the cover has pretty much every single plot point on it. Like, you're not gonna, like, I'm not spoiling anything from there because look, it's just a bunch of images. Like, how are you going to know what plot points are what? So, pretty interesting. And on the back, like, somebody even compares Michael Poore to Douglas Adams, which I can see. I got this from my local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries. This was a random checkout, and I feel it was a good choice, a good pick on my part. So for those that don't know, Michael Poore is a fairly new author. He's written some short stories, and he's written a couple books, this being one of them. A pretty solid book. I don't know much else about Michael Poore because he is a newer author, but I look forward to checking out more of his work in the future because this is a pretty good book. I would love to talk about Reincarnation Blues because it is a more recent book, published in 2017, I believe. I'm gonna be not so spoilery here. I'll do the summary, no spoilers, and then maybe some spoilers in the analysis section, just to be prepared for that. I will be recommending this book, so maybe perhaps you can go find out what happens on your own and have a wonderful time, because I did enjoy this book, and I think you might too. So without further ado, I'll do a little summary, a little analysis, and we will move on from there. So Reincarnation Blues focuses on the character of Milo. Milo is a life advisor in Florida. He's a surf dude, a surf bum, and after giving some advice to one of his clients, he goes surfing in the ocean, where he is unfortunately eaten by a shark. End of story. No, actually, that is a joke. He shows up in the afterlife, and it turns out that he has been living nearly 10,000 times, 9,995 to be exact. And his first death was during a couple thousand years ago in the Indus River Valley civilization. He lived a very virtuous life. And one day barbarians came and tried to raid his village, and he tried to save his people, but he ended up dying. And when he went to the afterlife, he met these cosmic beings who told him about the rules of life and the afterlife and everything like that. And so everybody gets a certain number of lives to live, and you have to achieve perfection so you can become part of the cosmic soul. So Milo has been attempting to do that. The cosmic soul is this pure sort of thing where everything is good and great and is as close to understanding as you can get. And so over time, Milo has formed a relationship with one of these universal beings, Death. She goes by the name of Susie, and she always greets him whenever he dies. She greets most people, so she's constantly meeting with Milo because he's died 9,995 times. However, Death and Milo's relationship is kind of forbidden. Human beings aren't meant to have relationships with the cosmic ones. But they still make an effort to have the relationship. And the other two cosmic beings just point out that it's more of a distraction for Milo that's preventing him from obtaining perfection. And they inform him that if he doesn't obtain perfection by his after 10,000 lives, he's going into the big nothing, which is goodbye forever. He doesn't get to have pure understanding. He just fades from existence forever. Throughout this book, you get a bunch of multiple like snapshots of mini stories of Milo's life, the various things he's learned about evil, about learning itself, about standing up to bullies, stuff like that. Just quick bites of the lives he lives and the many deaths that he's had, unfortunately, as a result. His 9,996 life involves him being a scientist discovering a comet that's going to hit Earth in 2025, and he sacrifices himself to allow his girlfriend and her daughter to go aboard the arcs that are going to go to space and colonize other planets in order to save Earth and stuff like that. And while the cosmic ones do note that his death was a sacrifice and a very positive one, it wasn't perfect in the sense that he's going that they're looking for, and so he has to keep trying, which is unfortunate. But he does have he's close to the answer there. At some point, Susie quits, and you get a bunch of chapters talking about her going through her new life as a non-cosmic being, although she's slowly fading from existence because cosmic beings weren't meant to quit. In another life, Milo is in the far future. He becomes imprisoned on an asteroid for a crime he did not commit, and he ends up becoming a telepathic messiah, altering the neurochemistry in the other prisoners' brains to make them happier. And after being eventually being found guilty, he commits suicide because he was learning to love being this sort of messiah. He starts meandering in the afterlife after this point, kind of looking for Susie, kind of trying to find his purpose, meeting other people who are also meandering and trying to avoid going back into the lives and leaving the afterlife for a number of reasons. In his 9,908th life, I believe it is, Milo is in Ohio in the 1940s, and he eventually he grows up and becomes sort of a motionless serial killer like way. He falls in love with a girl named Jody, and that starts to change him ever so slightly. But he ends up dying pretty young, so he's not able to make those changes as well as he would like. He then jumps into like his 9,999th life, where he's in India in the year 500. He searches for wise men. He eventually discovers the Buddha in his old age, but the Buddha is more senile and not as knowledgeable as one would think. A bunch of stuff happens in this life that I'm not going to go into and spoil, but a lot of people end up pretty mad at Milo, including the cosmic beings who threatened to throw Milo into the big nothing at this point. But he manages to escape with Susie, and they live one last life on one of in the far future on one of Jupiter's moons, and they end up doing a whole bunch of things that prove a benefit for humanity. I will let you read what that is. That's near the end of the story, so I don't want to spoil anything there. But I might do an analysis section. So that's about where the story kind of ends. In terms of analysis, there's a couple things I want to talk about. The first is perfection. It's a big theme that shows up throughout the story. Specifically, what is perfection? That is something that Milo is looking for, because in order to enter the cosmic soul, he has to achieve perfection in some life that he's living, and he has the option of choosing a life and trying to find perfection, although it's not known for certain if he's going to retain all the memories from his previous lives. So the cosmic beings want him to obtain that perfection, and it's a question that continuously pops up because he lives a lot of pure lives. Like, he benefits humanity in some way, and he does some good here and there, and he makes a few mistakes. But what exactly is perfection? The cosmic beings early on give him an example of a cow. Somebody's been reincarnated into a cow, and that cow offers itself to a bunch of poor people, and so it's sacrifice. But the cosmic beings note that it's not just sacrifice itself that leads to perfection, because a wolf in a trap, as they note, is capable of sacrificing its arms, but that's not like the sacrifice they're looking for. That's more of desperation. So, how exactly does one find that perfection? It really starts when Milo begins to understand when he finds the Buddha, and it really seems like perfection is tied to being more than sacrifice. It's tied to being, living in the moment, living a life without regret, doing as much good as you possibly can, not living to be a jerk or anything like that. And no matter how much loss and how many bad things you do, understanding that those things were good or bad or something like that, and moving on and trying to constantly better yourself. So it really seems like that is the answer. And there's a good quote that goes along with it too. So as the Buddha is dying in this story, he's sitting before some of his students, and they say, "What does perfection feel like?" cried a desperate voice somewhere in the grove. "How do you feel right now?" asked the Buddha. "Sad," answered the voice. "Scared." "That's what perfection feels like," said the master. "Don't worry. In a while, it will feel different." Soft voices, confusion. "Listen," said the master, coughing. "Don't search the ends of the earth looking for your happiness. Perfection is being happy with what you are right now." And I feel like that's getting at what Michael Poore is trying to tell you throughout this story, which is that Milo doesn't seem to be living in the moment in his many lives. He's always looking for the next thing, the next better thing, whether it be through sex or adventures or something like that. And he's not really trying to exist in the here and now. Very Buddhist mindset right there. And he doesn't really achieve that until his final life, when he leads a sort of revolution against resource cartels in space. And he's essentially makes himself a martyr. And he doesn't, when he's sacrificing himself in that way, he doesn't regret it. Like he'd like to live a little longer, but he ultimately knows that like doing this will benefit humanity and help the oppressed people throughout the universe stand up to their bullies in the future. And so I feel like that's what Michael Poore is getting at with perfection. There's still so much there that's worth talking about that I just can't go into, because it's layered in so much philosophy and various religious aspects there. We're definitely worth exploring more in maybe a separate video or something like that. Another thing I want to talk about is the Buddha and his death in the story. Milo encounters the Buddha and discovers that he's old and senile, often asking about people who are long since dead. And it's kind of discouraging to the Milo of ancient India. He ends up working alongside the Buddha, and he's worried about how if people see the Buddha for what he is, people will become discouraged, and it'll ruin the entire Buddhist mindset. And so what Milo does in that time period is he poisons the Buddha, and the Buddha dies. And when it's discovered, Milo argues that this was actually a good thing, because I'm benefiting. It's for the benefit of all of his followers. It's for the benefit of the Buddha itself. For the benefit of society. And the cosmic beings, once he dies, because he accidentally poisoned himself in the process, they say, no, you killed a wise man. What you did was very wrong. Your argument is wrong. However, later in the story, they're like, oh, we see what you meant with what you did to the Buddha. Perhaps you were right. And I wanna say, is it right? Is it wrong? Because on the one hand, you got Milo's argument that killing the Buddha allowed to preserve his image as a wise master, instead of people eventually finding out that the Buddha was very flawed, growing senile, and maybe he wasn't as mystical or as knowledgeable as people thought. But then you have the other people who say, that's wrong. You don't kill a wise man like that. It doesn't matter how old and senile he is. He still served as a beacon of hope for many people. And I think I'm more inclined to believe the cosmic ones in this case, just because it doesn't make sense to kill the Buddha. And no matter what justification you try to offer, like you're still killing a wise man who serves as a beacon of hope. And you can try to like sanitize that image once he becomes old and senile, but you're still killing somebody. You're like it's not for anyone's benefit but your own, really. And I feel like this goes back to the idea of perfection too. And I think that if one of the Buddhist followers discovered that he was old and senile and maybe not as knowledgeable, they could do two things. They could have a crisis within themselves and be like, oh no, I'm following this person who is not who I thought they were. Or they can accept it and move on, which is very in line with Buddhist teachings. And I feel like that's the benefit there. Like keeping the Buddha alive would allow people to adhere to his philosophy more easier. It'd be like, oh, the Buddha isn't who I thought I was. I have that thought, and now let it pass to me like a river or something like that. It's definitely something worth thinking about. And so I think I'm more inclined to say, maybe it wasn't a good idea to kill the Buddha. And I think Michael Poore put that in there to get you to think about it. I also like how the afterlife is depicted in this story. Michael Poore does a great job of presenting a different view of the afterlife. Usually in stories you get a picturesque sort of utopian view of the afterlife where you can have anything you want. And in this story you can have anything you want. If you want to have sex with death, you can do that. If you want to start your own business, you can do that. If you want to roam around and view paradise, go ahead and do that. But that's not what you're supposed to be doing, according to the cosmic ones. The cosmic ones want you to head straight back into the pool of life, pick a life, and try to get better. Make yourself more perfect, more pure, so you can enter the cosmic soul. So the afterlife is just a reminder that you need to work a little bit harder and get into the cosmic soul. Like there's more work to be done. You can always better yourself until you're the ideal or perfect. And it's interesting how that works out. I'm sure it's layered in some religion or life philosophy, but I that's not my background. So a lot of more understanding needs to be done before maybe I comprehend this whole book. Another thing I really like about this story are the beautiful sort of mini stories that populate throughout it. It seems like Michael Poore is really good at short story writing because that's what a lot of these stories read as beautiful short stories where you learn more about Milo and the various lives that he led. Someone equated him to Douglas Adams, and I definitely get it with the sense of humor and the writing and the constant recurrence of themes that are expressed in the same way by different characters, constantly repeating throughout the story. I like that. I think it reminds me a lot of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Definitely worth reading and seeing if you can catch any of those similarities there. And I also think the final chapter especially is very rewarding. Like you get through the entire book and you get to the final chapter and it's very beautiful and sad and heartfelt, and I enjoyed that. The only issue with the story that I have is it's very confusing, and I can't tell if that's because some of the ideas he presents maybe they don't connect fully. Like he carries them well throughout the story, and it just at the end maybe it's just a failure in execution, or maybe it's just that I don't understand Buddhist philosophy as well, and I don't understand like philosophy of death and religion and stuff like that, and I could stand to learn more about those things. I fully understand that I'm willing to admit like I might not understand this book to the best extent. I still enjoy it. Like it's very entertaining and good, and it made me feel emotions, which means that Michael Poore did exactly the job that he was supposed to. So yeah, maybe a little confusing, maybe a little hard to understand if you're not the most well-read or well-educated. And so despite the few issues that I had with this story, I did enjoy it. I loved it, and I'm going to say I recommend it to you. It had a very sprawling kind of epic feel to it, which I love in a book. Any book that has that sort of like generations kind of feel or something like that is something that I'll seek out and try to read. Luckily, I just found this at random though, so that was lucky on my part. Definitely recommend this if you can find it. And I look forward to reading more Michael Poore in the future. If you have something to say about my review, or you want to comment on something I said in my review, you read this book before, comment below. I would love to hear from you. Maybe you can help me understand this book a bit more. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that we can get Michael Poore and this book out to the masses. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and deathy travels. Farewell.